Before the sun rises over America's highways and city streets, before office lights flicker on, and before alarms are snoozed one last time, there's a familiar glow already waiting. A simple pink and orange sign humming quietly, promising warmth, caffeine, and comfort. Dunkin isn't just a stop on the way to work. For millions, it's the beginning of the day. But this empire of coffee and donuts didn't start with speed, scale, or certainty. It started with doubt that burned coffee, and one man stubborn enough to believe that everyday people deserve something better, faster, and friendlier than anything they'd known before. In the late 1940s, America was changing fast. Soldiers were coming home, families were growing, and small towns buzzed with new ambition. In Quincy, Massachusetts, a young entrepreneur named William Rosenberg was trying to find his place in that world. He wasn't born into privilege. His early life was shaped by financial struggle, responsibility, and the pressure to work instead of dream. Rosenberg dropped out of school early, not because he lacked vision, but because survival came first. He bounced from job to job, learning how businesses failed as often as how they worked. Those lessons would later matter more than any classroom ever could. After serving briefly in the military during World War II, Rosenberg returned home hungry for independence. He started a small industrial catering company, delivering food and coffee to factory workers late at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it was revealing. As he watched workers line up during short breaks, he noticed something powerful. Coffee and simple baked goods weren't luxuries, they were fuel. People didn't want elegance. They wanted speed, consistency, and a fair price. That realization planted a seed, but it would take years of frustration before it truly grew. Rosenberg's catering business struggled. Costs climbed, equipment broke, and profits vanished as quickly as they appeared. At one point, he was deep in debt, facing the possibility that everything he'd built would collapse. Many would have walked away. Rosenberg doubled down instead. He sold off parts of his operation, simplified his focus, and asked a dangerous question. What if he stopped chasing everything and perfected one thing? That question changed his life. In 1948, with borrowed money and a lot of nerve, Rosenberg opened a small shop called Open Kettle in Quincy. It sold coffee, donuts, and simple snacks. The early days were rough. Equipment failed. Recipes were inconsistent. Customers complained. Rosenberg worked long hours, often sleeping little, personally experimenting with coffee blends and donut formulas late into the night. He listened obsessively to feedback, watching what sold and what didn't. Slowly patterns emerged. Coffee and donuts weren't just popular, they dominated sales. Everything else was a distraction. By 1950, Rosenberg made another bold move. He rebranded the store with a name that sounded playful, memorable, and approachable. Dunkin' Donuts was born. The apostrophe mattered. It suggested action. It suggested freshness. It suggested that these donuts were meant to be dunked, shared, enjoyed without ceremony. But a name alone didn't guarantee success. The business still teetered on the edge. Competition was fierce, margins were thin, and expansion felt like a distant dream. Rosenberg's biggest challenge wasn't the product. It was scale. Every new store risked inconsistency. One bad cup of coffee could ruin a customer forever. One poorly trained employee could damage trust. He knew growth without control would destroy the brand before it ever became one. So he made a decision that many thought was reckless. He would franchise. At the time, franchising was viewed with suspicion. Critics argued it diluted quality and handed control to strangers. Rosenberg saw it differently. He believed that owners, not managers, cared more. He believed that if people had skin in the game, they'd protect the brand like it was their own name on the sign. In 1955, Dunkin' Donuts became one of the earliest food chains to fully embrace franchising. The risk was enormous. One failure could trigger many. But Rosenberg built systems, training programs, and standards that were strict for their time. Even then, success wasn't immediate. Some franchisees failed. Others cut corners. Rosenberg had to enforce rules, sometimes closing stores he'd worked years to open. It was painful but necessary. Slowly, the brand's reputation solidified. Customers learned that whether they were in Quincy or another town entirely, a Dunkin' donut tasted familiar. A Dunkin' coffee felt reliable. In a world moving faster every year, that consistency became priceless. By the early 1960s, Dunkin' Donuts was no longer just a local favorite. It was spreading across the Northeast, fueled by working-class loyalty and morning routines. Yet Rosenberg never saw the company as finished. He worried constantly about complacency. He feared that growth would breed arrogance. He pushed innovation quietly, refining operations, experimenting with new formats, and preparing for a future he knew would challenge everything he built. Dunkin' had survived its birth. The real test was still ahead. As America surged into the late 20th century, life got faster, and Dunkin' Donuts kept pace. Morning routines compressed, commutes stretched, and convenience became a necessity, not a luxury. Dunkin' didn't fight this new reality. It embraced it. Stores became more efficient, menus clearer, and service quicker. The brand didn't chase flashy trends for attention. It simply watched people's habits and molded itself around them. This quiet discipline became its superpower. A major turning point arrived when Dunkin' realized coffee was no longer just a sidekick to donuts, it was the main event. Instead of being a bakery that happened to sell coffee, Dunkin' transformed into a beverage-led brand. Coffee recipes were perfected, sourcing was improved, and consistency became a sacred mission. The company invested heavily in training and supply chains to ensure that every single one of the millions of cups served each day tasted exactly the same. This shift wasn't loud, but it was revolutionary. While competitors were busy chasing luxury and intricate cafe culture, Dunkin' moved in the opposite direction. It doubled down on simplicity and speed. There were no complex rituals or pressure to hang around. Dunkin' became the go-to brand for people on the move. Construction workers, nurses, students, parents, and commuters all found common ground at the counter. The message was clear without needing to be said. This coffee is for you just as you are. With this focused identity, expansion was inevitable. Dunkin' grew beyond its Northeast origins, planting its iconic orange and pink flag across the Midwest, the South, and eventually, the West Coast. International growth followed, with stores opening in Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America. Each new market requires subtle adaptations, but the core promise remained unchanged. Familiar flavors, friendly service, and prices that respected an everyday budget. This delicate balance allowed Dunkin' to scale globally without ever losing its soul. Innovation was key to staying relevant. Drive-through formats were meticulously optimized for speed. Mobile ordering was introduced early, perfectly capturing the customer base that valued efficiency above all else. Seasonal flavors and limited-time drinks created excitement and buzz without cluttering the core menu. Dunkin' mastered the art of refreshing its image while fiercely protecting what made it great in the first place. It was a masterclass in restraint, a lesson many fast-growing brands struggle to learn. Behind the scenes, the business was becoming a financial giant. Dunkin' evolved into a multi-billion-dollar brand with thousands of locations around the world, its valuation reflecting decades of accumulated trust. This strength caught the eye of major industry players, and in 2020, Dunkin' Brands was acquired by Inspire Brands. This landmark deal cemented its legacy as one of the most influential food and beverage companies on the planet. For a company born from debt and uncertainty, it was a remarkable full-circle moment. But the real heart of Dunkin' was never corporate. It lived and breathed in the franchisees who unlocked their doors before sunrise. It lived in the employees who memorized customers' names and their regular orders. It lived in the simple human rituals repeated millions of times a day, coffee being poured, donuts being boxed, smiles being exchanged. This human rhythm is what protected the brand from becoming cold and distant, even as it grew to a massive scale. Dunkin' also understood the power of a clear identity. When the company officially shortened its name from Dunkin' Donuts to just Dunkin', it wasn't abandoning its famous pastry. It was simply acknowledging what its customers already knew. The brand had become a daily habit, not just a product category. The rebrand was a signal of confidence, clarity, and trust in its audience. It was a way of saying, we know who we are, and we know you know too. Today, Dunkin' stands as powerful proof that success doesn't require chasing every single customer. It requires serving a specific customer exceptionally well. Its journey teaches us that listening is more powerful than shouting, that solid systems are better than shortcuts, and that humility can scale just as effectively as ambition. William Rosenberg didn't build Dunkin' by trying to predict the future. He built it by paying close attention to the present and respecting the people standing right in front of him. The lesson is simple but incredibly rare. Great brands aren't born from ego. They're built from empathy, repetition, and the quiet courage to continuously improve. So whether you're starting a business, chasing a dream, or just trying to build something that lasts, Dunkin' reminds us that consistency creates trust, and trust is what builds a legacy. If this story inspired you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Rise Chrono for more cinematic brand stories just like this one. Let us know in the comments which brand you'd like to see us cover next. Your support helps this channel grow one story at a time. Thanks for watching.